Part 45, surprisingly. But these adulterers, they really are trying to be on top of me like white on rice in my phone. And they really don't want me to do just one video, 1 hour, and I can be over with it. Um, or an hour and a half, however long. They're just splicing it 30 something minutes, 30 something minutes. So there's a part 45. Okay, so part 44, they edited my video and they're remotely synchronizing my phone. I have to get a new phone. And basically, I believe it was ended on being led to First Samuel 7 verse 1, where I think it's Eliezer, but whoever that individual was, he had to be sanctified to deal with the Ark of the Covenant. And so the Lord would help me to understand, um, basically, not any and everybody can just touch you. You are a vessel of honor too. You are like the Ark of the Covenant too. Um, and he even led me to Numbers 4 on the Kohathites. And basically, you can see that they couldn't see certain things uncovered or the covering of whatever it was, lest they die, right? So basically, um, what I understood, if you're not sanctified, called, chosen, equipped, anointed, um, basically to be someone's God-given spouse, you shouldn't be operating like that with the individual. To do so would show a sign of some level of death within your soul between you and God. And back in the day, and here in the Western world, they don't do it so much, but in certain parts of the world, the consequence for that is death. Okay? So, um, just keep that in mind. So basically, we're made to live and walk in the life and of God and reflect his image and likeness, because he is life. He is the life. So he doesn't want us to walk around in death. So God would help me to understand how to bear your vessel in sanctification and honor. And I touched on the basically that adulterers, they'll be really disappointed if a lot of the Jamaican apostolic churches or a lot of the churches in the USA started to have certain standards where the men and women don't touch so much, right? They wouldn't like that because they come in and the dating culture is their playground. And so the wizards on the devices in them and in the individual will try to create chemistry, make them feel a feel. Um, some of them come in and they want to rub in the middle of your hand if you're holding hands for prayer time. So they'll do certain things to activate your sensuality in some way, shape, or form. Um, Now, hugging and affection, that's all good with your God given spouse. Outside of that, that's adulterous, right? And so they use that as a way to basically do, as a gateway to do other things with the individual, with the virgin or the chaste woman or whatever. So they'll be mad at me because all that would shut down. And a lot of women would be protected by that. And a lot of men and young men, before they know the knowledge of God, will be protected too. Their hearts will be guarded too. So basically, they have some kind of touching agenda where they make the people feel a feel, or they felt a feel, or feel a felt, right? Um, but all of that is done to marginalize that individual who's in the house of the Lord, whether it's a mosque, synagogue, or church building, as they would call it, congregation. they want to marginalize that individual, basically reduce their significance. And embarrassment is one of their tactics. And great example again, Simona came in, and I touched on how in when I was doing part 44, I touched on how basically um, I went over the whole thing where the church knew I was talking to Christopher Delgado, and then Simona comes all of a sudden in November of 2016, starts sitting behind Chris when he would sit in the pew. He must have picked up that she likes him because he's very observant. And um, then one Sunday after church, it enters into his heart that we should all be together. Yeah, that sounds really nice. But the spirit behind it was not about unity of the spirit in subjection to the will of God in humility. Um, when Elder Walker heard him and saw that, hey, he was hurting me towards Simone, he wants us to get together. That's what Chris was saying. Um, Elder Walker said, love triangle, the discernment that he had. That's pretty much what it was, right? And so Elder Walker must have picked up too that Simona must have liked him. And he already knew that I was talking to Chris way before she showed up on the scene. So I just believe in talking things out in a civil manner and getting to some conclusion of peace or agree to disagree, whatever it is. So I spoke to him either that Sunday in his car or during the week in his car, and I said to him, I don't want us with Simona. Never said anything bad about her. Wasn't seeking God about her. Didn't know to even do that back then. And I expected that, okay, he would be on par. Me not knowing that he had double-mindedness or adultery as an issue in his life, or unfaithfulness as an issue in his youthful days or whatever. So I'm thinking he'll be, with it. Then he must have probably spoken to Pastor Francis about Simona behind my back, or um, she must have heard via devices. So when we go to a Bible study, I think this is it, either in late November 2016 or mid-November, she does this switcheroo, right? He was standing next to me, then she moves him to stand next to her. Now, that's not even done in Pentecost, right? Apostolic. If there's anything, there needs to be a meeting. We discuss things. We don't do stuff like that to people. We don't mess with people's mental health. So, I didn't know to seek God about, the whole thing back then. It troubled me a bit, but I think I was still talking to him at that point, but then things started to spiral down. So the Lord would lead me within recent years to where it says trading places. And then the wizards would be carrying on the devices, and I didn't like it. Like, love isn't supposed to be like that. But, I didn't know that all about, hey, these wizards, and they're like, this is an adulterous country and they're fighting against God-given marriages. So my thing was, I pray for peace for Simona and her soul, and peace for his soul. Wash my hands of the whole thing, because love shouldn't be like that. And I told God, if it's his will, then he has to fight for it, because I was just pretty much done with that. Then my attention went to just forgetting about it, listening to gospel music and singing along. And the Spirit of the Lord moved upon me. I was led to this book. It's for Christian marital couples by Dr. Edgar Wright, Love and Respect. And I was led to page 116, I think, in the middle of the paragraph, the second paragraph, where the husband is saying he wouldn't trade his wife for another line. So that helped me to know how God felt. After I gave it to God, let it go, wished nothing but the best or peace, and told God, hey, if it's His will, you fight for it. So it's not by might nor by power, but by His Spirit. So the Spirit of the Lord led me to that and helped me to know that His will was for Chris to be with me, and Chris should not have agreed with the trading places that Pastor Francis did. But you see, as young people, we're taught to be obedient and to be subject to our leaders. But leaders can be imperfect at times. David was. And so we're not knowing, I did not know that it was, as I sought the Lord within recent years about the spirit behind it, I didn't know it was like, envyings and wizards on the devices hearing about us. I must have heard about me bring up marriage and was like, no way. So they sent to Simona as a chess piece. She gets this inspiration, I guess, to come and then now sit behind Christopher Delgado, right? And so basically, what happens after that now, the Christmas fellowship, I'm not thinking any evil. I wasn't even talking to Chris at that time because things spiraled down, especially because of her. And so basically, what happens is we're supposed to be working together against an opponent in this Christian fellowship game. I had no clue that she was like just not receiving me, had hatred towards me, whatever. So instead of working with me, she was pelting me with the game pieces, and Elder Walker picked up and said whatever. And she did it in front of the children, which I don't find good to do. Don't do that. Don't follow that example. And doing that is an embarrassment tactic. They have an embarrassment agenda, and especially if you heard parts 39 to 40, that all that going on in the background and the insults, and then her just saying certain words to me, and I'm doing a video and she knows that she's being disrespectful. May God forgive her. But all of that they would do to try to reduce my significance in front of the world or in front of individuals. And so they would do that. And I'm not knowing that was like an agenda or a tactic to marginalize me. So basically, she wants to reduce my significance to Chris. So the spirit behind her must have known that Chris was is my God-given spouse. And so she's just mad at me, and I'm not even really talking to him, based on the knowledge that you have at that time, and this is her behavior towards me. And that was nasty. Never apologized. She never apologized for it. What happens in January 2017 is this. Pastor Francis talks to me because I was already involved in Sunday school, working with the children. So Pastor Francis tells me that I should work with Simona or share whatever information I have with her. So hence I was able to know her name, Simona Daly, if that's really her last name. And she would talk to me to do that. And I have no problem. But I think it never even worked out if she was supposed to work with me. It never even worked out because eventually the school shut down in February 2017. And that I'll talk about. But basically, I want to bring up the point that she never apologized to me and she wants to come work with me. And as a young person, you may not understand the person's heart. She don't receive me. She doesn't know me. She doesn't understand me. And so that's pretty much her heart was in adultery or lust for Chris. And she would want to work with me. Now, the next thing she'll probably do if she did work with me would be to embarrass me, reduce my significance. So you see how the adversary just works to reduce your significance in the house of the Lord. And one of the things that happened before the pelting with the game pieces is that there was a convocation coming up in December, late December, and early December. All of a sudden, at a choir rehearsal or whatever meeting, Pastor Francis tells me, and this is Pastor Francis, Frederica Francis of Orlando. Um, she may not be the pastor anymore, but basically what she tells me is that she doesn't want me to direct the choir anymore. Doesn't explain why. That's stuff that they do to do what? Fixation agenda and spiraling and all that. Um, but then I found out that there was someone after I left who was wanting to be the choir director. And I guess she was closer to Pastor Francis than I was. So here am I'm like hurt, and it's just this slow, subtle rejection. Basically, this is happening to reduce my significance. And it was a small choir. We were doing good. There were songs that we sang that they sound so good. And I was able to teach them, I am the first, I am the last, and beside me, there is no other God. I was able to teach that, and they sound so beautiful singing that. It was just a few of us. It wasn't a big choir. And if Pastor Francis had said, work with the choir director who has been directing for years in Connecticut, if she had said that, I wouldn't mind, or work and assist in that and learn. But just to take me all of a sudden out of it, and I was trying and whatever. So this is how it's done. They would come in and reduce your significance. And then they will be right next to you and probably do tactics to mess with your mental health and then try to reduce your significance in the church. That's what the wizards on the devices and the adulterers on the devices, that's what they're up to. So God helped me to overcome by allowing me to do within recent years like missionary work that they can't stop me from doing that. But when it comes to like working in children's ministry, I haven't been back since 2017. The school shut down, then the wizard inspires my mom to say, come back down to South Florida. There was just this feeling like, from one other individual that it's like I shouldn't stay there. And I wasn't even, if I knew back then, hey, the best route, if they're trying to marginalize your significance in the USA and in the church, and even before your God-given spouse, become a taxi driver. But be aware that the adversary on the devices will cause you to be arrested unjustly and try to mess up your record so that you could not have a job. They'll do that. And, God already led me to Revelation 2 where it says, hey, Satan wants to put you in jail. And I've seen them. Baker Act, prison, or jail. So that's how the adversary would work. So they have all these agendas, these adulterers and wizards on the devices with evil angels behind them. You need to know that if you plan to be in ministry or an individual that stands against adultery, because you may be a young person and you're like, why all of a sudden all these things happening? You don't know because you're young, and you're innocent. But here am I've lived through it to tell you this is why they do it. I sought the Lord, and in seeking the Lord, which through another individual via devices, they tried to tell me, just stop all this seeking, trying to understand. If I had listened to that, I wouldn't know exactly what it is that they are doing and that they would do through Christopher Delgado. So, marginalizing, trying to reduce your significance. And I think they have this agenda going on for quite some time, even before me being born. So, because one of the things I can remember, age 7, second grade, I believe it's a second grade classroom. It probably wasn't, this was public school. And they must have, her family must have exposed her, her cousins must have exposed her to something that the wizards would do with her and something with sexuality. Some female did that to her. Because when I was in the classroom, and this is why you should have a separation or distinguishing between the clean and the unclean. But when you mix them all together and try to tell young people to stand before they have the understanding in order to stand or the knowledge of God to stand, you are basically being unreal. So age 7, right? Age 7, she runs her fingers down my torso to my vagina. I didn't like it. I don't remember if I cried or whatever it was. I didn't like it, but that happened at age 7. And you know what? That's when I was baptized at First United Church in Brooklyn, age 7. So they start, once they hear you're stepping out because you really want God, that's the stuff that they would do with the young people. And the Epstein's files proved it, right? They'll start attacking those young children, exposing them, grooming them for sex. 9, age 9. Drunk man comes into my room, probably mentioned this before, sticks his tongue into my mouth while I'm sleeping. And this was in Jamaica. And I just wake up. I must have been yelling or screaming. And all I can remember doing is spitting, spitting, spitting. It was disgusting. Therefore, I don't believe in this child marriage when you're 9 and 7, when you're not mentally and emotionally strong and developed and mentally equipped and prepared for stuff like that. Don't believe in it for children. But that is a type of adultery. Pedophilia is a type of adultery. Age 12, speaks through an individual who has the devices. She starts like gyrating over a broomstick in the classroom, and she talks about masturbation. And then somebody asks, "You don't know about masturbation?" See, the children of God, if you grow them a certain way, they don't know about masturbation. They'll just continue on. So then I Googled masturbation when I got home. I think that was a time before parental controls, and I was exposed to pornography. Age 17, talking to this individual. He wanted to be a PIMP. And I did not know about certain things. He knew because he would show me certain things and I would say no to it. So he knew some. And then there was another classmate that said, I guess via her devices, the wizard spoke and said, it's time for you to have sex, or at age 17, it's time to have sex. All of that pressure, that's a form of witchcraft, mental manipulation. You want that spirit of fornication and adultery to be upon that person. You speak for that to happen. I went through other things that I've noticed that the wizards would do. Now I know that they did it through certain individuals. And you can hear the person in my household. They have devices. Please pray for them. Didn't know back then. And a lot of people aren't saying anything. If you don't say anything, it means you want the young people to fail. Age 32, fast forward. I'm 32, 31. Christopher is 29. One of the things they would do, the switcheroo, remove from choir directing, shut down the school. That's another thing that people don't know. But the adversary in the USA works via devices, inspires some people to do all this firing and laying off and all of these things. It's an unstable economy, and it affects millions of people who are in poverty or poor. Because the 1% is fine, they have their wealth, but it affects millions of people in the USA. And I'll give you an example. The shutting down of the school, somebody must have done an error in documenting or whatever it is. They must have known whatever it is. I know that that's what they do and cause people to lose their job. And I'll give you an example too. Um, Another Christian woman about to get married, and then all of a sudden she starts to resign from her job. I guess she experienced whatever, then she resigned. They start doing things so that you don't have money for a wedding ceremony, or you reducing your significance. If you don't have any money, why am I with you? These are some things that they come up with. So they would reduce people financially. That's why you have so much poverty going on in this adulterous country, because they're marginalizing. And why many people who are of the Caribbean background, or they are melanated, why they are suffering or struggling with paycheck to paycheck or more than one job, trying to make ends meet. They don't even know about the jobs that make wealth, because the wizards or whoever it is, they're not prompting you to think about, hey, you can be an MRI tech or a mammogram tech. They're not. Who talks about that, right? It's just the simple doctor, nurse, lawyer. Um, and so there, you don't know about these things because there's a spirit that's marginalizing God's people, marginalizing virgins and Christianity and melanated women in the USA. So they try to make you look like you are not valuable or important. And they have different tactics to do so. They'll shut down a school. Now, they may think that they're doing the right thing, but the adversary behind them convinced them and making them overlook the truth of the matter. Because when you look at Miss Navarro and Judith, they never had a heart to thief. And so if they don't have a heart to thief, then they're not racketeering. But then they can try to make it things look more than what it is. Hey, you know about the DOG system, DOG, Department of Justice, DOJ system, where in the USA they do some things and it's not right. Because some of these judges too, they have wizard devices. So anyway, they'll shut down your job if they find out that you're gonna get married. Some of these young people, they're stuck with $20,000 worth of debt because they want a wedding ceremony. You don't need to go through all of that, but that's the type of stuff that happens. And then he did the passionate expression of himself, and then of his professing his love, and then the next day, I love you, but I can't be with you. To do that, you're reducing my significance with whatever thought that he came up with overnight. Because even when I asked him, also because way before he did the kiss, he says to me something like his mama didn't like me, but I never had a personal relationship with her. So basically, I asked recently, and I was able to ask, so why didn't she like me? I never had a personal relationship with her. Then he says there was no one specific thing. So basically, no excuse for us separating but his lust and this satanic agenda behind him, whatever evil angel behind him, his lust for Simona, whatever, to marginalize me and reduce our significance together. He didn't give us time to grow, but he spent time 1 or 2 years in adultery and fornication with her. So I haven't been back in children's ministry since about 2017. And even before, about 5 years before I met Christopher Delgado, I was in ministry and someone said to me, um, at a sensitive time, anybody can do what you're doing, something to this degree, but not verbatim. Anybody can do what you're doing, or there's always somebody better that can do what you're doing, or God can always find somebody to do what you're doing. I did not know that was a wizard or adulterer on the device trying to marginalize me, reduce my significance. And then what happened is that, God would lead me to the book of Nehemiah and Sambala and Tobiah, right? And so God is trying to encourage me to continue the work that I'm doing. And then there was this individual, this young man, right? Kevin Ramsey. And at some point we were walking together and people started to perceive things. And then I approached him twice, and said, like, either if we're not going into, I guess, whatever direction, then we need to part ways. And I questioned him concerning this young lady, Janelle. And he did not tell me the truth. When he told me the truth? Mother's Day, after I had an argument with my mom and I was defending him because she was, she would do an insult, and I'm not about that, especially with the ESC background or early childhood background, or Montessori background, whatever it is. I'm not about that. And so I stood up, either one of them at that time, because at ESC, I think that was 2012, and Montessori 2014, 2012 to 2013 for ESC. So early childhood background, whatever background I had in education, not about this bullying, insulting words. Stood up, and she wanted to, I didn't know it was a wizard at the time, liking to isolate and kick people out, wanted me to leave. In the car on the way to Sister Paulette's house with Michelle Manning, which the adversary had attacked her on the topic of adultery, he admits to having slept with Janelle and got her pregnant at some point. Years after we stopped speaking, or sometime after we stopped speaking, he married Janelle. But on the Mother's Day, or whatever day, Saturday or whatever, before Mother's Day of 2011, this parent is basically marginalizing me, like I shouldn't be working with the children and whatever. Didn't know that was a tactic of the wizard on the devices. So I put in my letter of resignation and whatever from my positions that I was serving in. And then on my way to Sister Paula's house, that's when he starts to admit the truth. That's the type of tactics, because they do that via these individuals to move you from your position in the church, marginalize you, embarrass you. So one of the things, and I believe God is with me, is that I remember when I had to do a lesson for middle school, I was doing a lesson on how to overcome embarrassment. And one of the things I can do is despise the shame and acknowledge that there's something wrong with the behavior of the individual while they're trying to embarrass me. Clearly, now I know some wizards and adulterers on devices trying to marginalize me and doing the worst things to me, including sending Ian Main, who said, I've been trying to catch you, trying to reduce my significance. as a God-given spouse. And even when I spoke to Christopher Delgado recently, he says marriage is good and all, but like he wants to focus on the coming of the Lord. That sounds really good and convincing. Yeah. That's how they create eunuchs, fake eunuchs in the church. You mean you spent all those years in fornication and adultery, and all of a sudden now you want to be a eunuch? You're called to be a eunuch? I think not. And we all have to focus on the coming of the Lord, whether we're married or not. So all that's nonsense. So that's a tactic to reduce, against me, the significance of marriage, that the journey we're supposed to have with God, to reduce that. And saying all this, he didn't seek God and said, God said this. He didn't seek the Lord. They just move on their feelings. I felt a feel, a felt, or my unbelief, or double-minded heart, or mind. Marginalizing. So when it comes to actually doing the will of God, you're weak to doing it, or you're not willing. And that's his problem. And God helped me to know he already had that heart and mind problem from a long time. So the Lord will help you to know things. Know before you go. Seek God. He keeps your head lifted up above your enemies round about you. Because they'll do some things, want you to hate yourself, want you to blame yourself, and it's all a lie. They'll do some things to try to marginalize you, right? Basically, undermining the authority of the leading of the Spirit and His Word, and exalting whatever feeling or agenda of wizards and adulterers behind it. So they want to reduce our significance. They'll make you feel like you're not welcome. They'll call you unpleasant names. You may not be invited to some things. You may be excluded from social gatherings. That's all fine, just as long as you know if you're a child of God and chosen and led by the Spirit. Basically, they just want to marginalize you. And that's pretty much the conclusion of the matter. They want to marginalize you, take pieces of your virginity just to defile you, rape you just to defile you. And it goes back to why Mr. Trump would hold up the Bible like this. Now, the depth of his Christianity may not go into great lengths, but he does discern that, hey, all of America needs God. And they're trying to marginalize Christianity through these subtle tactics. I remember even being in Hawaii, and certain homosexual individuals, they wouldn't allow me, for whatever reason, to, I guess, stay at the Apple store and use the computer, or stay at the hotel after I booked to be at a hotel or whatever. They'll come up with things or do certain things or not be gracious